Welcome, welcome. Hello, leaders. Welcome. Come on in. Do me a favor. I want to make sure that I'm really connected and I can really see you all. So go ahead and send me a quick note and I'll know we are good to go. So you should be seeing me live on LinkedIn, as well as through Eventbrite on YouTube, and you might be seeing me on Facebook. So let's see. Let me confirm. Okay, I see a couple of folks joining. I don't see any comments yet, so I'm going to trust that you all can hear me. And if you can't, I'm sure that somebody will let me know shortly. So with that, I want to go ahead and welcome you. Before we get started and while people are still joining, I'm going to bring something up here. Okay. You can hear me. Yay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you for telling me, Sherry. It's always a little disconcerting at the beginning with these because you never quite know. So as people are joining, please go ahead and drop a quick number in the chat. You can see the questions I've prompted on the screen. And I want you to tell me what feels most true for you right now. Is it number one, you're doing more than ever, but you're not getting noticed? Is it number two, you are always busy, working too many hours and fixing what others miss? Or number three, you feel like your visibility or career has stalled in the recent years? So let me know what rings true for you. I love it. I'm doing more and enjoying myself. Okay, that's great. I'm going to take these off the screen or I'll distract myself. I love that. Yeah, Nova says she's doing more and enjoying herself. Let me see. Do we have any comments going on LinkedIn? I don't see any coming through yet, which of course always makes me wonder whether this is really broadcasting correctly. That said, I'm going to continue because wherever it's broadcasting, we'll have a recording and I'll make sure that everyone has access to it. So let's keep going. I see 3 in the chat. Doing more. Some of you feel like your career has stalled or lacks a little visibility, or maybe a lot of visibility. I think a lot of folks expressed interest in having this conversation precisely because they feel like their careers have stopped being rewarding, right? It's just stopped feeling rewarding. You're either doing all the work and not necessarily getting the reward that's commensurate with that work. You feel like your career has stopped. So even when you're knocking it out of the park, it doesn't actually seem like anyone cares. So I know exactly who you are, right? You're the leader that everyone depends on, the one who holds things together when it really counts. When something goes wrong, they call you, you fix it, you step in, you're the one who stays late, you pull things together, you're always saving the day and making sure things are working in the background. And for a lot of you, you're the backbone of your team, right? And maybe even of your company, if we're being honest. They come to you for everything. I like to say they come to you for everything except the promotion. And that right there, that is your signal. That is the moment you realize you've become what I call operationally dependable. The person who, oh, okay, hold on a second. It says here, it looks like my stream isn't showing up on LinkedIn. It's likely a known issue with LinkedIn, and they're working to fix it. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, we will, I don't think I want to end the stream, but I guess I can and come back in. So let me see if by any chance this works. Hang with me for just a moment. I appreciate your patience. Let me see if I can get this to work. So all of the destinations are working. Let me remove LinkedIn from this stream. So if I lose you, I will be back. Let's see. Okay, and now let's add that. Let's see if this works. Okay. So I don't know whether that worked to resolve the LinkedIn issue that StreamYard seems to think is a known issue. So we're going to continue, but I've gone ahead and did what I could on my end. But that said, I was talking about that signal, right? Being that you're getting all of the work, you're getting everything. They come to you for everything except for the promotion or the really big decisions. And again, that's when you realize that you've become operationally dependable. So let me know if that rings true for you. I know we have a much smaller crowd than usual, so I'm going to welcome your interaction because I don't know if I'm streaming to any of the other platforms. So I'm going to welcome your interaction. But let me know if that sounds familiar, because clearly, if it does, you're in the right conversation. Today's conversation is entirely around recognition and advancement and a strategic, I guess, framework from which to approach that. So you're exactly in the right place. Now, let's go ahead and welcome you officially. As we get started, I see some of you have already answered the question. I see ones, I see twos, I see threes. And if you haven't answered, you can feel free to drop that in. I'll try to catch it in a moment. But my name is Asia Bribiesca-Hedin, and this is how to get the recognition and advancement you deserve. This is not a motivational talk. I just want to be really clear. This is a strategy session. Over the next 45 minutes, or 40, hopefully, if I can cut it down so we end right on time, you'll see exactly why recognition and advancement haven't matched your effort and what to do about it. Right? You're going to leave knowing that one project to focus on that makes your value, your contributions visible, and the simple structure that keeps recognition sustainable, long after today's session. Okay, sound good? So I want to start by naming what's really going on. Okay, I want to start by really calling it out because that's where everything starts. Earlier, several of you have said that you're doing more, and you're saying you're always reliable, but not very visible due to several systemic issues. And, you are not alone, by the way, Nikhil. Doing a lot and receiving recognition, but not necessarily consistently. And again, you are not alone. And I think what we see is that you're working harder than most, or at least it feels that way, especially when you're not getting the recognition, or you're getting some recognition, but it doesn't match your effort. And so we kind of saw a couple of those comments pop up live. That right there, so I want you to notice that disconnect. That is the hidden tax of dependability. At least that's what I've come to call it. And it's the cost of being the one everyone can count on. You're trusted to keep things running, but you're not trusted to set direction and shape what's next or be at that decision table. Yes? And this isn't a performance problem. I think that's what's so important and what I want you to take away if you hear nothing else that I say today. It's a visibility and structure problem. So let's look at what that really means, okay? I want to make this real for a second by taking this quick poll. Let me see if this works. And you know what? I don't want to I was going to do a Mentimeter, but just to avoid any technical issues, now that you've heard what the hidden tax is, no need to go to Mentimeter. I'm not going to activate it. So just go ahead and drop it in the chat. You heard about the hidden tax, and these are typically the three ways that shows up, right? One is a self-worth drain. You're relied on for everything, and no one really seems to realize just how much you're doing and how much you're holding together. There's the time trap. You're constantly working, constantly fixing things. You're there after hours. You're available weekends. You're taking calls at the family barbecue because you're afraid without it, things are going to fall apart again. And then there's number 3, or the control gap. That's where you start to second guess yourself. You constantly second guess yourself. You revisit conversations. You replay things in your head. Even if you're fully prepared, you continue to question yourself and you're caught in a swirl. So if you're willing to share, please do share in the chat. Let me know. Is that the self-worth drain? Is that the time trap for you, or is it the control gap? Okay, I see some time trap. I see self-worth drain. And you know what I notice about the time trap? For those of you in the time trap, and you can definitely push back if this does not ring true for you, but for those of you in the time trap, has one of your solutions, quote unquote, been to actually work harder or do more? Has that been one of the solutions you've gone to? Let me know. You can let me know in the chat as we go. But I'm curious because the time trappers, you all tend to do more and more. And I know that's true for anyone that this applies to, but certainly for the folks who are in the time trap, that is your go-to, right? That is your go-to, to do more because you think the more is going to fix it. The more is not going to fix it, although you're probably here because you have noticed that by now that there's a disconnect here. So again, you're not alone, even in this small, group. Every accomplished leader I coach has paid at least one of these taxes at some point, right? It goes with the territory. But here's what's important. None of this means you're doing anything wrong. It means your effort is simply being misdirected. So I want to look at exactly what I mean by that and why that happens and what shifts when we change the structure and focus around your work, okay? So I'm going to tell you briefly who I am because I realize this may be the first time that some of you are in any sort of space with me. Some of you have been in my, leadership community for a while. For others, this is literally the first time. So just briefly, I am absolutely that recovering, operationally dependable leader myself. I've been the one holding everything together, fixing things. In fact, I remember taking such glee, and you guys, you don't have to out yourselves, but I'm going to out myself. But I remember taking such glee and joy when I would create my out of office message. And I was involved with so many different initiatives and had a key role in so many important moving pieces that I loved to have my out of office message up so everyone can see all of the different things that I had a hand in. So that's interesting because I was mistaking, probably like some of you here, I was mistaking my involvement in those initiatives with, I guess, being a strategist, being important, etc. Okay. Now, I started my career as a management consultant at Ernst & Young right out of business school, and that led to enterprise transformation and initiatives. So yes, I've also had my share of, herding cats and getting other people to move in the right direction, as well as overseeing multi-million-dollar, strategies and keeping them moving. Today, I'm an executive coach and a leadership trainer, and every client I work with has the one goal of making sure their results match their effort. Let me know if that rings true for you. Right? It doesn't matter in what words the goal is presented, but it kind of comes a bit back to that, making sure their results match their effort, because no one wants to feel like they're being undervalued or underacknowledged for their contributions. And something I love sharing, just so you know, because there is meat behind what I'm sharing today, 100% of the leaders in my former group program, which was a 12-week program, the Intentional Leadership Group, which some of you might have heard of in the past, they all reported improvement in their leadership index scores, 100% within 12 weeks. So I share that, and that was, that was about 100, just over 100 leaders altogether in the different cohorts. I share that specifically so there is meat and there is research behind this and about what works. It's not just that it sounds nice. This is actually on the ground, what's working. So yes, I do know the frustration. I also know the structure that changes that feeling of invisibility and being undervalued for what you actually bring. So let me show you where the structure actually comes in, right? Now, every organization, I like to say, has a couple of leadership identities. Okay, and you guys can feel free to share in the chat as this rings true. You know, there's the one that keeps things running that we've been talking about, the operationally dependable leader. You know, they're known for their reliability, fixing problems, reacting to needs, etc. And the other is the one who shapes what happens, the strategically significant leader. They're known for their direction, for their influence, and for their visible results. Both are valuable, but only one is seen as and rewarded. You get that? So they're both creating value, but one of them is getting the reward. The shift we're making today is really about moving from that dependable box to the significant box. Okay, if you want to think about being in one of those boxes, you know, from being the fixer to being the strategist who actually gets to set direction. And again, the good news is that shift is not personality based, it's not performance based, it's structural. Because leadership, it gets a lot easier and a lot more effective when you have a clear way to lead and are not just doing a list of things. So tell me in the chat, for how many of you does it ring true that sometimes it feels like you're just busy but directionless? Does that little phrase resonate for you? Busy but directionless. Like there's always more to do tomorrow. You're just not sure whether you're moving towards any sort of finish line, right? So are you guys still there? I want to make sure that this is still connected. Yes, it looks like you're still there. Excellent. Thank you. So again, that busy but directionless, it's a shared experience. So we're going to solve for that today as well, because nobody should be working and feeling like their work doesn't matter and there's just more to pile on tomorrow. Yes, we should all be working top of license, contributing at the highest level we can, and getting recognition and the reward that goes along with that contribution. Okay, so this is the structure. I call it the strategic path, and it's a framework that helps you focus on what counts, building repeatable ways of working, and staying grounded even when things get chaotic and everything around you shifts, right? It starts with strategy, and that's identifying and focusing what actually matters at your level. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment, but remember that comment, at your level. Then there's systems. That's the consistent ways of working that make your progress visible and sustainable, so everything doesn't live in your head, right? And then finally, there's support. That's the feedback, the pressure testing, the course correction, the accountability that keeps you sharp and on track again when things go off the rails, when pressure builds, etc. And when these three work together, and you'll see exactly how, leadership stops feeling like you're just firefighting or reacting or busy but directionless, and it starts to feel intentional. This is how leadership gets easier, more consistent, more valuable, more recognized. And it's exactly what we're going to continue to unpack today. So I want to dive into the very first part. I'm just going to go forward. Let's start with strategy. Because before you can be seen as strategic, you have to actually lead strategically, right? And that begins with clarity. Clarity about what really counts, who it counts for, and what about that is visible to the people making decisions. Now, again, most of the leaders I coach, they are not underperforming. In fact, none of them are. In fact, they're working really hard. They are excellent at execution, right? So a lot of you here are probably excellent at execution, but you're not getting what you believe comes next. So they're working hard. They're just overinvested in the wrong work. Like I said before, their focus, their effort is misdirected. Recognition begins with clarity. It really is that clarity about what counts and for who. And strategy, I want you to think of it this way, it really is clarity in action. It's how you take what you identified as what matters most and align your time and attention and your energy toward that. Okay. Now, right now, I know this sounds conceptual. We're going to get more and more specific. But when you're clear about what counts and you're strategic about how you're investing your time, your work becomes visible. It becomes pretty hard to miss the value you're bringing. Now, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people like to use the word undeniable. I don't like to use that word because in every environment I've been in, there's somebody who's been more than willing to try to deny someone else's contribution. You all pick up what I'm putting down. So I'm not going to say undeniable, but it's going to make your value unmissable in a way that you can pick it up and take it with you anywhere you go. Okay? Now, again, this alignment is important between, recognizing what actually counts and your work aligning with that, because effort without that kind of alignment ends up being a lot of invisible work, right? And a lot of you, again, are probably already experiencing that. So I want you to think about it. Are you spending most of your energy on what's really important or just on what's urgent? Okay, think about that. You working on the important or the urgent? So let's go to what happens when you've got strategy, right? You're working on the important stuff, but the structure to support it. I'm sorry. We're going to the systems. I totally skipped systems, but the system to support it isn't there. Yeah, we don't want to skip systems. That's a big deal. So the second foundation then is systems. And systems, no one likes to hear the word systems because it sounds like I'm talking about machines or something like that. But all it means, it's a consistent way of working that makes progress repeatable and visible and not a one-time thing, right? Without systems, every success you have depends on you personally holding it all together. And if you want to scale or do more, it's on your back. It's on additional effort. Clearly, without systems, your work is not scalable, it's not sustainable, and by no means is it strategic. But systems transfer that those ways of working, the things you've learned from your head into the way that your team, your colleagues, or even your own department works, right? So that you're not reinventing things every time it comes up. They're removing that guesswork and that feeling that you're constantly firefighting, and it makes success repeatable because everyone knows what good looks like. How many times have you gotten to the end of an initiative or some piece of work you've been working on, and there was a complete disconnect about what the end result was supposed to be, what good or excellent looked like, right? And I think also what's important is they know how to do this without you needing to have the same conversation over and over and over and over again. If you like having meetings because meetings are your social hour, then by all means. But if that's not your intent for meetings, then what you're trying to do is get everyone aligned. You need a system for that. And in fact, that's one of the 3 systems I say everyone needs to have, right? That's a meeting protocol to keep everyone aligned and tight without endless rehashing. So at the end of the meeting, everyone knows what's happening next, who's doing what, and by when, and where to get support if they need it. Very straightforward, but we often don't take the time to create the system around that. So our meetings, how many of you have had meetings this month that you swear you had last month? Let me know. How many of you have had meetings this month that you could just swear you had last month? So that's the first protocol that I think everyone needs to have. The next one is a delegation funnel. So for those of you who have teams reporting to you, or even if they're not technically reporting to you, but you're high-level individual contributors who lead initiatives or projects, the delegation funnel is critical because it makes sure that work is happening at the right level in the right place, because a strong leader wants their team to be working top of license, right? You don't want to be the one holding everything together. And then the last one I would say that everyone needs is a stakeholder visibility map. I didn't create a slide for this because I just wanted to share those off the top, that it's really meetings, delegation, and then stakeholder visibility. And that stakeholder visibility map is really about ensuring that the right people actually catch you winning. Okay, so they can support your efforts. Now, when success is built into your systems, into how you and your team and your department works, progress then doesn't depend solely on you, right? It multiplies through everyone else who has a hand in the work you're doing. And then finally, now to the last one, even the absolute best, tightest systems only work when you have support, because you won't have a system for everything. So this third foundation is support, and it's not about encouragement or help. It's a structure to keep clear and to stay on track and on path, and to make high quality decisions even when things around you are uncertain or chaotic, right? Most leaders, they don't fail, again, because of lack of skill or intelligence. They fail because they're doing it alone, and they run out of gas, and they get caught up in the swirl in their head. So support gives you the feedback, the perspective, the accountability, the checks and balances, all those things, as a safe sounding board, all of those things that keep you grounded and clear and making progress and not getting derailed when the pressure gets high, when things get complicated, right? It's what helps you pressure test those ideas before you take them to senior leaders and have someone roll their eyes, right? It's what helps you separate emotion from strategy when things are starting to get tense or feel personal. And it's also what keeps you focused on growth instead of just reacting and trying to survive, right? Trying to go from one thing to the next. So I think that, we kind of captured everything there. Here's where a lot of leaders get stuck, though. There's some common mistakes that even high-performing leaders make. And it just, I don't know how else to put it, but it keeps them from reaching the type of recognition and results that their work really does demand. And so I really want to dive into those. And as I'm speaking, feel free to just make a mental note of which one feels most like you. Feel free to drop a note in the chat. Again, we're a small group today because of that apparent, LinkedIn issue. So please do interact, so I know I'm not just talking to myself. So the very first mistake, number one, is doing a great job at the wrong things. When strategy is missing, you deliver really strong work that doesn't matter at your level, right? Maybe you're perfecting the formatting on the executive update deck instead of shaping the narrative that you need people to understand in order to influence next quarter's priorities. Are you guys following when I say that? So this is when you're over focusing on the things that should be happening far below your level. Or again, if you're an individual contributor, other things require more attention, right? Or you're picking up the slack, you're rewriting reports and troubleshooting your team problems, instead of letting those tasks be managed by staff or your colleagues, because you feel like it's faster to do it yourself. But again, that's because you're doing a great job at the wrong things. And I know there's a sense of satisfaction there, but you need to decide to be strategic, okay? You need to decide to be strategic. I wanted to go down a different path with this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try to stay focused so that we finished on time. So the bottom line here, though, is that you're producing outputs that no one values. You're staying busy in details that are not at your level, right? And that's because you're too busy keeping things running to actually build influence with the decision makers. That's how strong leaders get trapped in the dependable, trap, instead of being seen as the strategic driver. Maybe it's not fair that you need to have influence. Maybe it's not fair that you need to have these critical relationships, and yet it's what's real. Yes, it's what's real. Now, you fix this by defining just what matters most in your organization at your level, and then make your work visible where the decisions are made. That's when your effort starts working for you instead of just adding more hours. and showing just how much you can shoulder. Okay, I know this is landing with some of you because I can tell by the chat. But the second mistake happens when, again, systems are missing, and what that means is you're leading or working without repeatable ways of working. And again, without systems, and I alluded to this earlier, every single win or every little bit of progress depends on you personally holding it together. You're catching those mistakes and following up on the updates, and you're running literally on memory and checklists and a lot of coffee, but no structure and no strategy. Maybe you're a manager and who has to personally review or fix everything before it goes out. But do you? Because some of you are going to say, yes, I do. But do you? Or an individual contributor who's constantly double checking, redoing, and re-explaining work because expectations weren't met again. Yeah? Either way, progress depends. Sorry, you guys, I am sweating in here. Okay. Either way, progress depends on your constant involvement and babysitting. That is not what we want, because that means that you can't step back long enough to think strategically, to nurture those relationships with the folks who make decisions about the kind of resources and opportunity that are going to be made available to you, your projects, or your department. Can you see that? You're not allowing yourself the space to work on higher impact work. And the way we fix this is by putting those simple, repeatable systems in place. So you're not recreating the same decision and the same conversations and the same explanations. Things keep moving even when you're not in the room. So those emergency surprises that keep showing up every month? Those shouldn't be surprises, right? So once we fix this, those are on autopilot. They're no longer an emergency. Okay, I'll move on. The third mistake, it happens when support is missing. And I mentioned earlier, support is not about help, but it is about operating in a silo. When you're trying to figure everything out yourself, leadership gets really exhausting. You start second guessing your decisions. Again, you replay conversations. You're wondering, oh my God, did I do that right? Did I say that right? What were they thinking? You start to obsess. And then you start to make these kind of big, important, consequential calls without a sounding board. So then even the little things start to feel really political or risky, right? You don't know if you're stepping into a landmine. That's what happens when you're operating in a silo. There's no feedback loop. There's no perspective. There's no space to think out loud before taking action. And sometimes, rightly so, this doesn't exist in your space because it's hard to find spaces that are agenda free. Let me know if that rings true for you. They don't have a horse in the race. All they want is to see you win. There's so few spaces like that, right? And so often, even the best leaders will operate in a silo. But the result is, again, you're leading in isolation. You're surrounded by people, but with no one you can talk to who really gets it. Now, the way you fix this is by building in consistent, trusted, agenda-free, pretension-free, however you want to think about it, support. People who can challenge your thinking, even if it bristles a little bit, you kind of expand your perspective and keep you anchored when things get messy. Can you see that? Because leadership is not a solo sport. I was thinking about this yesterday. No one in my family plays golf, but every so often I'll watch golf. And golf is not a team sport, but it's absolutely not a solo sport. And I thought, wow, that's very much like leadership. So you can let me know if that lands for you or not. But that just kind of hit me the other day. It's not a team sport, but it's definitely not a solo sport, right? You need the other folks there. You need, at a minimum, the caddy there. So back to leadership, right? Without support, even the strongest, most capable leaders start to question themselves. Okay. So which feels real for you? Can you see now how these big three mistakes that kind of keep people paying that hidden tax, even though you know better? And I know that probably everyone here has at one point or another given similar advice on what I'm discussing here to someone else, because we're great at giving advice to other people, aren't we? We're just so strategic and amazing. But the fact is that if you can fix even one of these, it changes how you lead. It changes how you're seen. And of course, it changes how you spend your time, right? So take a second, notice which of these feels more real for you. There's power in just naming it. You don't have to even share it in the chat, but if you do, that's great. But there's power in just naming it for yourself, right? That awareness is what makes kind of what comes next powerful, because once you can see the gap, you can start to close it. So those of you who've been with me before, you know I love matrices, because they require you to distill a lot of information into very straightforward space. So I hope I've done that here. But this is the strategic significance matrix. It shows you how your visibility and your strategic relevance work together to shape your recognition and advancement and opportunities, and the resourcing your department gets, and the tables you get to sit at, all the things. So up and down, this is where we have the visibility of your work. How much of your effort and impact is actually seen by the people who make the decisions about the opportunity, the resourcing, the advancement, etc. And then across the bottom, we have enterprise strategic relevance, or enterprise strategic alignment. How much your work aligns with what the organization considers important, okay? And that part is key. That's why I'm stressing the organization. And I called it enterprise strategic alignment, not just strategic alignment. It's not about what you think is strategic. It's about what the enterprise thinks is strategic. So let me give you a quick example, just for a frame of reference. One of my clients was spending about a quarter of her week addressing data quality issues. And it's important work, right? It is clearly important. We can't function without it. But senior leadership wasn't thinking about data quality. They didn't want to hear her talking about fields and reports. They were thinking, how quickly can we reach out to new prospects? So once she stopped talking about the data fields and, the tables and reports, and started talking about speed to contact, her influence, it just shifted, it skyrocketed, because suddenly when she spoke, they thought, oh my gosh, she gets it. She totally gets it. Same work, different framing, and completely different, perception. And that's why perception is at the center of this matrix. It's the gap between what you're doing and how it's perceived in terms of value. So let's quickly walk through each of these. Okay, I'm still going to try and make it in time, but just starting at the bottom, if your work is low visibility and low strategic relevance, you're in the invisible and misaligned quadrant. So this happens when you're kind of saying yes to all, and you're taking whatever work comes your way, instead of deliberately filtering or raising your hand for projects and tasks that align with enterprise priorities. And we often say yes to all because we're trying to be helpful, but all work is not created equal. Right? And when your effort is invested in tasks that no one is measuring and no one values, then your value stays hidden too. It doesn't matter how hard you worked on it and how well you knocked it out of the park. That's where burnout and underappreciation and disillusionment and dissatisfaction and feeling like your soul has been crushed lives. There's nothing like knocking it out of the park over and over and over again and feeling like it doesn't matter to anyone but you. You guys with me? Okay. Now, if you're working on high priority initiatives, but no one really sees your impact, that's what I call strategically unseen. So you're doing the right work, but you're doing it in the dark. Now, this happens when your work is kind of buried under layers of visibility, like when you're solving problems, but someone else presents the results, right? You're just contributing, or you're the creator of what they're presenting. You're contributing at a high level, but the story of that impact never reaches decision makers. So, as I like to put it, you're the organization's best kept secret, and nobody wants to be anything's best kept secret. Yes? Now, the next one is if you are visible, but known mostly as a fixer or doer, then that's visible but operational. And again, this is probably a very common one. It happens when you're known for rescuing projects and diving in and running things and fixing things and being efficient, stepping in when other people drop the ball, but you're not known for setting direction and strategy, right? So you're trusted, you're dependable, you're essential, but you're not yet seen as influential. And it's funny because for a while I was focusing on, well, we all want to be essential. We want to be essential because we're essential to the big picture, not because no one knows how to run the backup except for us. You guys with me? Okay. And this is, of course, where we want to be, and that's strategically significant. So your worth is both, it's visible, it's aligned with enterprise priorities. You're in the rooms where decisions are being made. Your contributions are actually informing or shaping those decisions. I mean, that's when recognition finally catches up to all of that contribution and effort. Right? That's where we want to be. So I want to make this real. This is a quick exercise we're going to do. So if you have a notebook, nearby, or just a sheet of paper, or even in your head, go ahead and do it. Draw a line down the center on that piece of paper. And on one side, write enterprise priorities. And on the other side, write my work. Okay? Okay. So what I want you to do now, hopefully it's obvious, is write down the top initiatives or priorities for your organization. What they're focused on, what they're talking about, what they're spending money on. Okay, what they're focused on, what they're talking about, what they're spending money on. And then I want you to jot down the things that you work on. Right? So on the other side, list those projects, those meetings, all of the functions or tasks where you spend most of your time each week. So take a moment and do that, even if you're doing it in your head. And I want you to look at the overlap and the gaps. So for those of you who wrote it down, if you had to circle just one project or area where your time and the organization's priorities actually meet, what would it be? If you can, go ahead and share that in the chat, but is there an overlap? And if so, what is it? Because then we want to be strategic about how we're engaging in that piece of work, right? And the other question, though, is there just a gap? And there is no overlap. All right? What are you spending your time on that isn't really showing up on the enterprise radar? That's essentially a secret. Oh, let me go back. That's essentially a secret. Okay, so I hope that was helpful because it's really super simple, but not everyone takes a pause to do it. Not everyone stops. So this quick check helps you see where your biggest opportunity is to move toward the right side of the matrix we just looked at. The shift that makes how you spend your time start working for you instead of against you. So let me show you what closing the gap looks like in real life. I had a couple of just client wins, no names, because we're going to keep that confidential, but I did want to share with you because some of these are just really impactful. So here's what it looked like for this leader. This leader was ready to quit after feeling completely unseen and dismissed by her boss, despite having strong results, and her team really loved her. But it felt like they were always at odds and bumping heads. This probably already resonates with some of you. Right? So together we did a stakeholder assessment. We clarified And it was such an aha for her. I still remember that her boss's attitude, it was a sign of overwhelm and a leadership vacuum, not an intentional decision to be in conflict or to be, hard to work with or have a bad attitude. Once she recognized it, she was able to kind of fill that leadership gap. And the result, she literally elevated her role from being a dependable executor, just, one of her boss's direct reports, to a strategic advisor. So in less than 90 days, and I say 90 days, but from the time we made this realization, did the stakeholder assessment, to the time the relationship had shifted, it was literally probably within 4 or 5 weeks. But she was invited into every senior meeting. She was consulted before every single important decision, and she was seen as a thought leader. And I just find that absolutely astounding, because that is what happens when you step back, remove the emotions from it for a while, right? The emotions are normal. They're supposed to be there, but we remove them so we can get strategic and make decisions with the best part of our brain, right? Strategic clarity became influence in her, in her world. She was certain that she was going to have to quit anyway. And she'd been there for so long. She's a senior nurse leader at Kaiser. And that's just wonderful. So I'm going to go on to another one. Another client, she's in tech, and she was faced with a major reorg, and it left her role feeling really, even when we talked about it several times, really unclear, and her influence really shaky. So we applied, the kind of same framework. We considered strategy, we considered systems, we considered support to help stabilize her leadership in this reorg, right? She built systems for visibility, for communication, and for alignment that made it hard for them to miss her value. And now, while the dust actually is still settling, but she already has more authority and recognition and influence than she had before the reorg, right? And this is continuing. So in this case, the structure and the support, it really turned that uncertainty into, in her case, authority. And the difference wasn't her title. It was the structure and support. Okay, so now you've seen, these 3 foundational elements. I want to let you know, I know we're at time. We had that technical issue. I'm going to try to end at the top of the hour, straight up. So thank you for your patience. But I want to make sure you get all of this. So you've seen the 3 foundational elements, yes? You've seen how they work together. And this is the same strategic path we've been walking through the entire time today that I introduced at the beginning. Every single leader who's made the shift from overlooked to being influential and of consequence did it by aligning how they lead with these 3 elements, right? And at some point, every leader reaches this exact moment, the moment where hard work is not the problem anymore, right? They're excellent at execution. It's direction. So now you have a choice, and the choice is between, the 2 paths. And as I said, they're just, it's so straightforward. I wish that it was something that we talked about every day, but there are 2 paths that eventually every leader is going to face. The first being the familiar one, where you keep on figuring it out yourself, keep thinking if you work harder, things are going to work out. You keep on paying the dependability tax, you stay busy, reliable, overworked, doing great work that never quite gets seen. And then the second path is the strategic path that we've been walking through. You use structure instead of willpower, right? You lead with clarity, with focus, with systems that make success visible and repeatable and manageable. So same effort, completely different outcome. One path keeps you firefighting and feeling like you're busy, again, but directionless. And the other, it actually moves you forward on purpose, right? You're doing it intentionally. And the leaders there's a couple of leaders who I mentioned, they changed how their careers were working, and they didn't wait for things to get easier, right? They chose the strategic path intentionally. So let me show you what that looks like. So I want to introduce you to the Unshakable Leader. It's a 12-month strategic leadership and influence collective. It's for experienced leaders. I typically say 10 or more years of work experience, professional work experience, but it's for experienced leaders who want to expand their impact, their recognition, and their effectiveness. Right? You've already proven you can execute it. You've already proven you can lead. Now it's really about leading in a way that feels easier and more strategic and much harder to overlook. Yes? It's built on the same three foundations we've been talking about: strategy, systems, and support, working together to make your leadership stronger and steadier, more visible, all the things. And here's why this works. Because even in the real world, in uneven systems, which I like to refer to, it's built for reality. I understand, like I said earlier, it may not be fair that the person who works the hardest or puts out the highest quality work isn't the one getting recognized. And yet we want to be able to excel in this real world, even if we recognize it's not fair. You with me? So it's built for reality, right? Not theory. It works when things are messy and uneven and people are unfair and priorities are shifting and reorgs keep happening and there are limited competing resources. It's strategy first, so there's no more trial and error or guessing what actually is important here. And it's built for continuous growth. So unlike my 3-month program, it's a 12-month, and I'll talk more about that. But the structure moves with you through reorgs, through promotions, and every new season and shift in your leadership. You do not outgrow this work, right? It grows with you. So let me show you exactly what that looks like inside. So inside the Unshakable Leader, again, everything works together to make leadership and leading easier and more visible and strategic. And this is not another course of concepts, so I want to be really clear about that. I want you to think about this before I put anything else on the screen. This is your leadership operating system. In fact, I started calling it that, but I pulled back because I hear another few people starting to use that kind of language, and I don't want to confuse it, but it really is an operating system. It's a rhythm, a way of working that keeps you growing and visible and steady and, dare I say, almost peaceful, no matter what is happening around you, right? You're not going to lose your head over it. So every month you'll move through 4 kind of core components. Each one is designed to solve the problems that, again, keep leaders stuck, the ones we talked about today. So first is your monthly leadership protocol. Now, you know that constant feeling of, if I don't hold it together, then everything's going to fall apart and go off the rails, or everything's going to be messed up. That's what these fix. So the monthly leadership protocols, they give you simple, repeatable structures that stabilize how you lead and how you make progress visible, right? You'll stop reinventing the wheel every single time something happens, and you'll start leading in a way that's predictable. It's calm, it's clear. Because when success and that kind of progress is built into your systems, your leadership stops depending on, like I said earlier, on willpower, and it starts running on structure. So one of my clients used the 30-minute team meeting protocol I mentioned earlier, and she freed up close to an hour a day, and her team started working more independently, but the hour a day was because there was no need for all of the constant check-ins and follow-ups. And that's what happens when you install structure and a way of working instead of carrying everything in your head, right? The second piece, that's strategic decision-making and the mindset reset. Because sometimes you don't need more time in your day. You need better thinking and better decision-making, right? These short, they're 60-minute high-impact sessions. They sharpen how you decide. They sharpen how you prioritize. They sharpen how you lead and the way you approach your work. They help you separate the noise and the chaos and the quote-unquote urgent distractions from strategy so that you stay focused on what actually moves the needle, again, at your level, right? You'll start noticing that what used to feel like that monthly firefighting, like I mentioned earlier, it's now intentional. And that's when people start describing you differently. You're not the one who keeps things running. Right? They'll start saying you're the strategic one. You're the one who kind of sees the whole big picture. Next, you'll have the live coaching and leadership roundtable calls. So they're one a week during the month. So just letting you know, since I didn't give you that perspective. So, and I'll walk you through what that month looks like. But you'll have the live coaching and those leadership roundtables, because leadership is not a solo sport, and yet you don't always have the kind of high trust space where you can bring real challenges and workshop them right away and distinguish your next steps and refine your strategy and figure out the words you're going to use to communicate that difficult message, all of those things. So you get perspective, accountability, honest feedback without politics and without pretense. It's the kind of support that keeps you grounded, even when, again, things get crazy and they announce yet another reorg, right? And it also speeds up your growth when things are actually going well. So every time someone says, I wish I had said this instead of that, I wish I hadn't approached it that way, that's exactly what that room is for, so that you have less, fewer of those moments. And then at the end of each month, we actually slow down for a minute. It's not even a slow down. It's an intentional step back, and it's just long enough to look at what's working, what's not. So this guided assessment, and planning session, it helps you celebrate progress. You'll highlight the lessons learned, and you'll plan with clarity what's next, so that every month starts just smarter and takes into account any challenges that emerged along the way, right? So it's just a stronger way of leading. It's that pausing and assessing that makes growth deliberate instead of just a reaction. So most leaders skip this step, right? And that's why you stay on the treadmill. And then finally, this is important, but once every quarter, we'll zoom out for kind of strategic focus and planning review. And it's where the strategy, the alignment, the clarity, it all comes together, but on a larger canvas, so that you're being specific and deliberate about assessing what has worked to date. Are my goals still the same? And now, are they reflected in my work going forward? So these 90-day reviews, they're meant to help you connect daily leadership, how you spend your time, to the outcomes that you're actually trying to make happen. Right? Something we don't always do. So you leave those with just renewed sharpness. Every time I've done a 90-day review, it's just amazing what I discover. And you leave with a plan that makes your next quarter feel really on purpose, as opposed to directionless and let's just see what happens, right? Leaving it to chance. So when you put all of these together, the protocols, the strategy reset, the coaching, the quarterly reviews, you're not just improving as a leader, you're actually building your leadership operating system. It's the cycles that keep you steady and visible even when there's chaos happening. And this is what sustainable leadership looks like. It's not about doing more. It's about leading in a way that finally makes sense. So I wanted to just briefly take you through what your first 30 days would look like inside the program to make it more concrete. So week 1, you'll complete your leadership index assessment and get clarity, and set a baseline on your strengths, your blind spots. By week 2, you're already applying your first leadership protocol. We do this very quickly, and creating some breathing room in your daily work. By week 3, you're showing up to the leadership roundtable with real examples, as well as any challenges, again, that are emerging and that you want to workshop or solve for. And then by week 4, we're doing that quick step back to assess what worked, celebrating progress, and planning next steps. So now that you have an idea of what it looks like to be inside, here's what it takes to be a part of the Unshakable Leader. As opposed to, I want to put this out, because as opposed to being another expense, this is a structure that finally makes leadership sustainable. It isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about installing a rhythm that keeps you steady and visible and effective and confident. Yeah, we're talking investment, and I want to give you perspective because I saw a couple of former clients in here. So for reference, my 12-week leadership program that I saw 1 or 2 people in here I've been in the past was $3,750. That was 12 weeks. I was very deliberate. I wanted the unshakable leader to be something that's more supported for the long term, but also accessible to more of the leaders who need this work. That was really important to me. So if you apply today and are accepted to join, your founding round rate is only $199 a month for 12 months. It's a 12-month program. So it's $199 a month for 12 months, just to make it easy. Or for those who prefer to pay in advance, it's $2,000 paid in advance. You save almost $400, $388, I think it is. Both include a full year of strategy, systems, and support, everything we just walked through together, right? It's designed to make leadership easier, more visible, more valued, more confident. So you're not working harder to get recognized, you're working more strategically in a way that just continues to build over time and grow with you. Everything we've covered today is included when you join the Unshakable Leader, right? So you'll have full access to the tools, any replays of any of the sessions we hold, because I fully expect busy leaders to be on all different schedules, every live 60-minute session, your private member portal, where you actually also have an opportunity to confer with other members, your leadership protocols that you can access on demand and implement yourself if you're not trying to implement the one that we're doing as a community. And then, of course, community support. So the program fits your schedule and continues to grow with you. And there's one important note. When you join during this founding round, you're going to keep this price for as long as you decide to stay with us. Now, that matters because the 12-month program price will move to $3,750 to match the value of the 3-month leadership program. So you're not just joining early, you'd be kind of locking in that best rate. And I don't know about you, but I like a deal. But it's the best rate that the program will be offered at. And because this is a founding round, I wanted to add a particular bonus. I just need like 5 more minutes, just letting you know since we're at the top of the hour. So I want to let you know what the bonus is, because when you apply and decide to join this round, you're going to get an invitation to a live influence strategy design session. Influence strategy is one of the most amazing advantages that leaders I work with have. Now, in this session, we're going to co-design your personal influence plan so you can start applying immediately. It's a small group session. I'm going to lead them myself. Now, most leaders, they see a shift almost immediately in just their influence, their presence, the way they're working, the way they're communicating. And this is going to happen even before the full program begins. So I think it's just such a powerful way to start the Unshakable Leader, like already demonstrating that strategic visibility that we've been talking about without second guessing yourself. So that's your bonus, the live influence strategy design session. And it'll just get you applying the work right away. So let's talk about how to join, because I want this process to feel as intentional and supported as the other things we've talked about today. And I'm going to keep it brief. You go to bridgewellpro.com/apply. And by the way, that's also where you get your live attendance bonus. Scroll to the bottom of that page and the live attendance bonus will be there, but it's going to disappear very soon. Hopefully it hasn't already disappeared. So if it has, drop me a note, okay? So when you go to that URL, it'll take you to a short application that takes about 5 minutes to complete. Okay, it can take more if you decide to invest a little more time and reflection in it, but 5 minutes. Once you apply, you're going to be invited to schedule your strategic alignment call. It's a 15-minute quick call with me. We're going to talk through your goals, your leadership priorities, and just confirm whether the Unshakable Leader is the right structure for your, next step in leadership and what you want for your career. If we both agree it seems like a fit, then you're going to get a link inviting you to enroll and get immediate access to the leadership index, which you'll take right away, and your first monthly protocol and the member portal. So that's it. No long interviews, no hoops to jump through, no sales calls. It's just clarity, alignment, and then your next step forward. Whew, okay, that was a lot. Now, I know you did not come here to keep things the same. You came because you're ready to lead differently. And I want you to really think about that, right? So apply now. Let's make sure the Unshakable Leader is the right structure for your next cycle. And at that point, you can decide. So as opposed to having Q&A, I want you to just do a quick check-in with yourself. If you had to choose just one, based on what you learned today, where would you make the biggest shift right now? Is it strategy, systems, or support? Where would you make the biggest shift right now? I want you to think about it and drop it in the chat, because now you know all about these three. So share it in the chat. And wherever you landed, that's your starting point to go from dependable to strategic. Every day you stay in dependable, you are limiting your results for yourself, for your team, for your future, for your opportunities. Every successful leader eventually recognizes the need to go from dependable to strategic, right? The unshakable leader is where that happens. And it's for those capable leaders stepping into being strategically significant. So thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for showing up for your leadership, for your future. Thank you for your patience with the weird tech issue, which apparently we never did connect to LinkedIn. If you've been nodding along while I've been talking, this is your next step. Go to bridgewellpro.com/apply, submit your application now while this round is open, right? And we'll confirm whether this looks like the next right step for you. You did not show up today to keep things the same. You showed up to lead differently. So I look forward to seeing your application, and I know we're over time, but if there are a couple of quick questions, I'm glad to address those, again, since we have a smaller group. So I can stay on for maybe 5 minutes. And I'm looking at your answers now. So, okay, so strategy, that seems to be the popular strategy. How about the rest of you? I see another handful. You're still here. Yes. And Cherie, yep. No systems, single point of failure. That is a great way to put it. That's absolutely right. No systems, single point of failure. So let me know, what questions do you have for me? What's interesting or appealing about this, if you want to go there? And you know what I would love to hear, again, since we're a smaller group, what is your key takeaway from today's session? What is your key takeaway from today's session? You know, for those of you applying, you can go ahead and let me know in the application, but I would really love to hear it from you. What is your key takeaway from today's session? Thank you. Thank you, Jay. I'm glad it was helpful. And thank you, Mikbal. Okay, no questions. Okay, if there are no questions, then I will go ahead and wrap it up. I don't want to keep you here any longer than I already have. I hope you're walking away with some clear next steps. Again, for many of you, I hope I see you in my inbox once you submit your application. Oh, Sherry, you shared your key takeaway. Make the work I do more visible. Yes. Yes. Remember, not all work is created equal, so we need to stop behaving as though it is, right? Okay, leaders, go out there and lead.